Okay, we'll be getting started real soon. So get settled in, grab a drink, and we'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, hello and welcome to our WWDC post-show. We just watched the event and there is a lot to talk about.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, like I thought there's a whole point at the start of the show where they go through a ton of stuff. There's like new lock screens announced, everything. And I think they went on for maybe about 30 minutes. And then Craig said, well, that's iOS 16. And I was like, oh, there's a lot more left to talk about. So, John, in a sense, what are some of the things that we saw?
I haven't had enough time to process it all. Yeah, just a ton of stuff on all of the OSs across the board. We saw some new hardware coming, some surprises.
Yes.
I have to say, I was a little surprised about the M2 announcement.
Yeah. It was one of the things that was, I guess, rumored, but it's rare that they show off any sort of hardware at WWDC, right?
Yeah, and it's worth noting this stuff isn't coming until next month.
Yes.
And I don't even know what that means. Like, can you pre-order it next month? Or
I don't think they even mentioned that.
Yeah, they did. They usually are a little dodgy about some of those details, but yeah. I guess the big thing that I noticed just looking at all of the different things that they talked about across everything is that we finally get to really customize these devices for ourselves.
Yes.
This is something that Android users have enjoyed for a long time, and I've been jealous of.
Of course.
I mean, full disclosure, my iPhone is my primary phone. I have many Android phones that I do use and play with and test things with, but you know, the iOS platform is my main platform.
Yeah.
And I've always been kind of disappointed that I have to choose Apple's themes, and even then, it's very limited options that you have.
Yeah.
So the big thing for me is being able to customize your lock screen.
Right.
And they've added a whole host of new interesting things that you can do to your lock screen that you couldn't do before. The big thing, customize wallpapers that are, there's more to it than that. Let me get into that.
Yeah.
So you have themes for your wallpapers now, so you can actually take your photo and it will automatically detect a person in that photo and put them in front of the clock and the date and everything like that. So you get this interesting depth of field effect.
Yeah, it's something that we saw on the watch currently. You can have a whole watch face dedicated to that.
Yeah.
On the watch, however, it only works with portrait mode photos.
And people.
And people,
Which we'll talk about later.
Yeah. So they didn't actually specify that this is only portrait mode.
No, it just seems to be just about anything. But what I thought was really cool is that there appears to be filters for your wallpaper, which is really cool. So you can actually have different effects, but also you can actually link these things to different focus modes.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah. But you also have these things they call, well, I call them active widgets. They call them, what do they call them? Live activities.
Live activities, yeah.
Right, which gives you a little bit more data in real time on your lock screen.
Yeah, it's interesting. The one that stood out to me was the sort of like Uber arriving little widget that came up.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of sort of like the Google cards that you can get.
Yes.
Except far more, it seems, bespoke for the actual app that you have installed.
It's funny because sometimes this stuff looks like it's from a movie because the movies tend to do these kinds of things that we know aren't available on any current platforms.
Yeah.
At least not as beautifully as designed as these were shown to be. But the Uber example is really good, but you also get other more richer experiences on things like your sports scores, so you're tracking your favorite team.
Totally,
your music, you get the album art now on the lock screen.
Full screen display.
Full screen display. They've got a really nice feature. I think a lot of the things that we've seen on the watch have come to iOS for the lock screen because they have a photo gallery shuffle mode now. So you can actually have random photos on your home screen, which is great.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even like the way that you can have multiple lock screens, similar to how you can have multiple watch faces.
Exactly.
You just hold down, it opens up your selection, and you just swipe through.
And we kind of joked about this when it was happening live. You can change the font.
Yeah. That's right.
Like Apple never lets you change the font. They're the font police. So
I don't know if you would be able to like add your own fonts. I doubt it unless you're using some sort of third-party system.
Yeah, but it's a lot more like the customizations we've seen with the Apple Watch and the watch faces that Apple gives you the choice to customize.
Yeah, it's a real interesting move to like, I think this is just in general a move of, I think the whole thing that we saw, I guess, across the conference was the unification or the further unification of certain things when it comes to OS. And we'll get into a lot more of that later.
Yeah.
But I think this is a step in how they're sort of unifying watchOS with iOS now.
So we should mention, because this is a live stream, if you're watching this live, we have comments. If you have any questions, let us know what you'd like us to talk about specifically. If you can't hear us or anything like that, let us know in the comments down below. If you're watching this on replay, well, sorry.
Well, thanks for tuning in after.
Yeah. So the big thing that, again, just to harp on the lock screen, because it was kind of the first thing out of the gate, and they came out swinging, I think.
They did, yeah.
Is that you can tap any element to choose a different style or a font, which I thought was really clever because they have different color combinations, kind of like themes for that. And again, we've never seen this granular level of customization on your lock screen. But what also is really cool is because you can have these focus modes now, which is something that came with iOS 15, which I love because you can set a mode where, like, don't disturb me, I'm trying to do a Zoom call and I don't want to get all my notifications from Facebook or something else.
Yeah.
You can separate your work life and all that kind of stuff, but even apps. But you actually have the ability to have these focus filters so that you're not going to get notifications for those things as well.
Oh my God. I love this. The whole integration of focus modes in the lock screen.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the things I am definitely going to use. Like the whole idea of having a lock screen for work that only shows you notifications and is only limited to like, I think some of the things they showed off was you can see like the weather for that day or the location just for work. But then when you get home, it's like family photos and things like that.
Yeah, so you truly can separate the work and your personal stuff. And when you're trying to do something, you're not constantly looking at your phone, being distracted by notifications that aren't relevant to whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah, because even with focus modes at the moment, you can filter through apps and things and like in what apps notify you per focus mode, but you can still get a lot of the useless stuff from those apps. Yeah.
And that's what happens a lot of times is you'll get like, say you're getting a notification for a live sports event that's happening in real time. You're gonna get lots of notifications.
Yeah.
But if you're in a meeting or something like that, I mean, maybe you still want to get them. I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah.
I'm not your boss. So, but those kinds of things you can decide to minimize the notifications. You can mute them for a while. It looks like. And the other interesting thing is that this live wallpaper has these little sort of iconography that are pulled from different things, like your kind of like on your watch. They're like the complications on your watch. You have the ability to see like your rings. You can see your the weather. You can see things like pretty much anything that has been widgetized by Apple, but they've also announced Widget Kit for developers, which means developers can start building this stuff into their apps.
Yeah.
Which is really exciting.
That's so exciting.
Yeah.
We needed more widgets, like, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, that's as far as they have new widgets on the lock screen, new customizations.
Oh, and being able to move your photo around on the lock screen so you can reposition that photo so that it's, because this is the problem, is like you pinch to zoom and like, okay, well, it's off center, or it snaps to something you don't want, maybe because it's a live photo and you have to turn off the perspective shift and all that kind of stuff. But now you actually have the ability to sort of just pinch and zoom, position that photo of your kids just perfectly over top of the clock. So it's just, their hair is just sort of at the, just coming over the top a little bit. But it's just a really nice whole ton of customization options you can have. It might even be overwhelming for some people.
I think so. It's going to take a while to get at least my head around it.
Yeah.
And another thing is they have a whole new wallpaper gallery, which I guess extends further into the actual homepage now.
Yes.
So the one that they showed off is their astronomy.
Which is really cool.
It was real cool. Basically, it had this sort of, I say, outer space image of the Earth. There you go.
A live satellite photo or a video of the Earth, and then you swipe up to unlock your screen, and it turns the Earth around and shows you the real-time position of Earth, cloud cover, all that type of stuff on your desktop, or all your wallpaper,
homepage, I guess.
On your homepage dashboard. And just having all that kind of functionality was really kind of cool, and being able to see it in real time, it's all connected. It reminded me a little bit of like how the Apple TV screensavers kind of work, where you have different ones for different times of the day and that kind of thing, and they have a very deep pool of choices for those things. And it sounds like they're going to be like feeding this theme gallery, or wallpaper gallery, sorry, regularly with stuff, just like they do the Apple TV.
Right.
So
yeah, which I'm glad to see, because I love the stock Apple wallpapers, but it is rarely updated. I think, if ever, since
I almost never use them though. I mean, we're both photographers.
Yeah, I know that is.
We take good pictures, I think.
Yeah, I like to think so.
We like to look at our pictures. So.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty much everything from the lock screen.
Yeah. So. I guess we'll just go through chronologically, kind of our highlights.
I think
we both took a lot of notes.
Yeah.
The next up was iMessage. And so you now have the ability to edit your message after you send it, which is going to be really interesting, because the example they showed is you can correct typos very quickly. But I'm also wondering about how long can you edit that message, because it's going to change the context of the reply.
I'm assuming once there's been a response, that's probably been cemented in there.
But if you do send it to, and I did this the other day, I sent the wrong message to I sent a message to the wrong recipient. You can now undo send, and again, I don't know what the time frame is at before. Like if they've received it or looked at it, if they haven't looked at it, do they get a notification like, oh, John texted you? But the whole timing, that we're a little unclear on that, because it can be sometimes those things can be almost instantaneous.
Right. Yeah.
Like if our phones are both unlocked, you're going to get a notification that John texted you.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to untext you. So.
Yeah, it is interesting. So they did mention that there's some new features as well as that. One of which I was hoping for one feature in particular that they didn't have, and that was just the ability to search through messages.
Well, maybe you can with something we'll talk about later on. The Spotlight.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
You can also mark as unread, so you can actually highlight messages that you've read that you need to look at later on, which I think is
that is a handy
kind
thing,
of a fundamentals basic thing with message reading. And then they've built in SharePlay support into iMessage directly now.
Yes.
Which is really nice.
That is real cool. So you can guys be like watching something together as a group and sort of just live texting along to it.
Yeah. The other thing that they really did, and I think this isn't limited to iMessage, is the voice dictation on the iPhone has really been extended. And you now have the ability, while you're dictating a message, the keyboard will stay persistent. So you can actually type and talk and sort of get it out of your head, because sometimes you need to sort of do both, right? And a really cool feature was the ability to, okay.
Oh, thank you.
Robin got a comment. You have the ability to highlight some text and delete it and replace it with your voice.
Yeah, that is cool.
So again, I'm not quite sure how that's going to work in a workflow thing, but it does seem like it's a really handy feature because sometimes you can speak complicated things faster than typing them.
100%. And then you realize that you've made a mistake, being able to go through, undo that little bit and retype it.
Yeah.
Funny enough, that was the thing I didn't even realize was missing, the fact that the keyboard wasn't there. But then once you mentioned it, I was like, oh, yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah. No, and I've had that problem. Like, you have to like get out of the dictation mode and like click on something to get the keyboard to come back up.
Yeah,
it's kind of annoying. Yeah. So live text, which was something that, again, that was announced last year, has been improved to work in video now, which is crazy. So
that's unbelievable.
So imagine being able to pause a YouTube video and being able to select code off the screen or a URL or any kind of information that is selectable from a screenshot. Or not even a screenshot, a paused video.
A paused video, yeah. Like there's been so many times, especially for like our edits and stuff, where I'll have to screenshot a video, I'll bring it in, do the live text, or I'll just like take it down from there.
Right.
That kind of blew my mind. And they spent so little time on it that I was like, wait, go back, I want to know more about this.
Well, you know why they spent so little time on it, because they had so much to go through.
And before the next thing, hello Jimmy, thank you for tuning in, and I appreciate I'm going to take it as a compliment that I look like David Amell. He's a cool guy.
I don't even know who that is.
He's another tech dude.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so visual lookup. This is really cool. So this is something, again, that was part of iOS 15, where you can snap a photo or just use your camera and it will detect either a plant, pet, or landmark.
Yes.
And they're adding more functionality to this. But the nice thing is like you take a picture of that plant that you don't know that's in your backyard, you get this little star icon on the info button, click on that, and then you can press the lookup button, and it gives you like a sort of like a Google or a Siri search result for that thing, and it's pretty accurate as far as I can tell.
Oh, I haven't had any issues with it.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few times where it's like, he's not quite sure what kind of plant it is, because it could be lighting or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But they've added the kind of a really interesting ability. So imagine if you're taking a picture of a dog and you want to send that dog to your friend on iMessage, you can literally use the visual lookup, has kind of like a background removal. So you can actually pull the dog right out of the photo and drop it into iMessage. It's kind of like as if you took it into Photoshop, deleted the background, and then you just have like this nice dog.
Yeah, just a dog sticker you can use in your messages.
But yeah, can you use it as a sticker? Can you pull that into Photoshop and the background's already removed? Like there's all kinds of potential things you can do with that, right?
Yeah.
So you can make really cool avatars where you're just pulling yourself out of something, right?
Yeah. And what's cool is they did mention this was strictly with the new neural engine, that this isn't just a portrait mode thing. You can do this with just regular photos.
Any photo, yeah. Yeah, which is great.
Yeah.
And let's go on to...
And they have in the Translate app, they now have a camera mode. So I think very similarly to what Google had with their Goggles app and such, you can now have a live translation of any foreign languages or...
Try it on my shirt.
Yeah, we should. But yeah, I thought that was cool. Oh, and currency exchange as well.
Oh, really nice.
Yeah, if you have a picture of currency, it'll do a live change.
Very cool.
Yeah, so I thought that was cool.
That's very handy. So yeah, so Wallet has a couple interesting new features that I thought were worth mentioning. So right now, when you're using your wallet to, say, pay for an Uber Eats order, right? If you're ordering alcohol, for example, at least here in Canada, you have to prove that you're a certain age.
Right.
So you have the ability to share your birth date through the Apple Wallet with them. But it doesn't share your birth date. It just confirms that you're old enough to drink, which I thought was really interesting. It doesn't say your birth date. It just says you're over 21 or whatever the age is in your municipality. And I thought that was really kind of clever. So the whole idea behind that is the privacy aspect. Like, they don't need to know your actual birth date.
No.
They just need to know that you're allowed to order this product.
Yeah, it's like Apple Wallet, so you're like cool uncle now.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. That's good. And the big thing that's been talked about for a while now is tap to pay. And this is going to, unfortunately, probably severely damage Square.
Yeah.
But basically, it gives a retailer. So imagine being like at a craft show or a small coffee shop. You don't need to buy any equipment anymore. You don't need to buy a terminal. You don't need to buy a debit card machine or any of that kind of stuff. You can literally just use your phone as a mechanism, just like if you've ever been to the Apple store when you have to buy something, they're using a phone there to do that.
Yeah.
And they have a little special case on the back, but
that's right. Yeah.
but essentially it means you don't need any hardware anymore, and you just use you can take Apple Pay like for free.
That's wild. Yeah, like it's just literally you just tap phones as if it was a card terminal.
Yeah.
And it just works.
Yeah.
And what is interesting, because I think, yeah, you're dead on, this is going to affect Square, but of the list of platforms that they said supported, I think there was like Stripe and a few others, Square was one of the platforms.
Well, because a lot of retailers do use Square to build their inventory systems and stuff like that. And this doesn't replace that.
No, not
this
at all.
This just makes the actual payment system easier. Because with Square, you have to like charge up a little puck if you're going to do tap to pay.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if you remember the old ones where you plug it into the headphone jack and you swipe the card and all that kind of stuff.
Oh my goodness.
So. But basically, all that stuff is sort of not necessary anymore. You're still going to want to have some kind of a system. Like you see a lot of coffee shops nowadays use a Square terminal because it's like a cash register, because they still have to deal with cash sometimes.
True, yeah.
And also inventory, which this doesn't change.
No.
So this is just going to make it really easy. You know, even if I want to. You can pay me for the trip that we went to Tofino a few weeks ago, a few of us, and I paid for the ferry ride, and Robin had to chip in, and so he could have just paid me that way instead of us doing an e-transfer.
Yeah, and I think this could be potentially a very interesting way to pay buskers.
Yes.
Or like maybe at a farmer's market, kind of things like that.
Anywhere that you said, oh, sorry, I don't have any change. Now they're like, well, I got an iPhone, so you're good.
Yeah. So that was a cool thing I like to see.
Also, and I'm pretty sure this is probably going to be US only. They didn't specify, but Apple Pay Later, which is really cool.
Yeah.
It basically takes whatever, say you buy something for $100, you can do 4 equal payments over 6 weeks with no fees.
Yeah.
So basically it's an interest-free payment system that allows you to break up a payment over 4 payments.
Yeah, it's nuts. It's kind of similar to what you see with Apple's own financing plan when it comes to buying their things.
Like PayBright, which is now Affirm, and other things like that. But I think it's a really great way to, let you spread out the payments for something without having to go and apply for credit somewhere else.
Yeah, totally. Now, do you think this is something that the actual retailers will have to opt into?
No.
Really?
No, because they said that. They said that the retailer doesn't have to do anything. This is your decision on your phone on how to do this. And essentially what Apple's going to do is it's going to write an IOU to your credit card company saying, hey, in 2 weeks, Robin has to pay this chunk of money towards this thing he bought.
Yeah.
So it's all handled, I think, by Apple, but I'm sure it's underwritten by a bank or something.
Yeah.
But we'll find out more details about that soon. They didn't get into a lot of detail, unfortunately, but I think it's a really cool way to handle things.
Oh, super cool.
I mean, I'm going to pay for that donut over 4 payments, 25 cents every 2 weeks.
Yeah, and
was there anything else on your wallet that you found interesting?
There was, you can track orders.
Oh yeah, order tracking is very cool.
Yeah. So similar to if anyone's used apps like Shop and things like that, it basically just pulls down information from your email, and you sort of courier emails that come in, Amazon, and just sort of gives you a nice aggregated zone that gives you all the details in one place.
The big thing that Apple was big to mention about this, though, with all the stuff related to the wallet, is the privacy stuff. All this stuff is, for the most part, handled on device.
Yes.
So you're not sharing any personal information to those other vendors. Things like Shop and these third-party vendors, you have to give them quite a lot of personal information just to use them. And Apple's saying, no, actually, you don't anymore.
Yeah.
So, but again, we'll see what countries it's supported in, that type of thing. At this point, I'm assuming everything we saw today, unless specifically called out, is US only.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of Canada as well.
There was, yeah. So I think that was it for the wallet. Next, they had some stuff on Maps.
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually started using Maps again recently. I'm a longtime Google Maps person because I've been misled by Apple Maps a few times. And if when you're driving and you get directed somewhere, and especially if you're in a city you don't know, there's nothing more frustrating than being sent down an impossible turn. You got to try. Just turn left on the highway. Like you can't. And it's certainly gotten a lot better. And they've recently added a whole bunch of sort of I guess, 3D mapping functionality to it. So it really looks like a futuristic mapping system now.
Yeah.
Google seems almost dated now in comparison. So I've been using it a lot more in my car because I have CarPlay. But they've added a couple really cool things that I thought was really cool. Multi-stop routing, so you can actually, like, especially if you're like a delivery driver or you got to go pick up the kids and then go grocery shop, like you can do all these things and you can map it all out. And you also have light and dark support.
Yes.
So these maps will actually shift into like a night mode, and they're like, the buildings are lit up like at night. Like it just looks really nice.
It looks so nice. Yeah. And then what's cool about that is as well is it's going to be integrated into third-party apps.
Yeah.
So similar to how we have Google Maps, and some of the ones they showed off was Bird.
Right.
And basically using their new, beautifully high quality and highly accurate map system to find bird scooters.
Yeah. So it's just it's a prettier way of looking at maps.
Yeah.
It's not photorealistic, but it kind of is.
It's like it's detailed.
It's detailed. You get lots of little trees if it's a park, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
like,
they have landmarks.
Like it's a little bit easier to understand your surroundings instead of like a flat color plane that you. I mean, Google does have some of that as well.
Well, they do. Yeah,
and you certainly can layer on the satellite view and stuff like that. I think TomTom was the one that was sort of underneath the Apple Maps structure.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if they're still involved with that, but I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was cool. And the other thing they seem to have added is, did they have like a Street View thing before?
Not really, no.
Okay, so I guess that is, I wasn't sure, basically they showed off a Street View function.
Look around mode.
Look around, yeah. And they showed it off in the context of apps like Zillow.
Yes.
Things like that. So I wasn't 100% sure if that was already available.
No, and as far as I know, it's not. But I think it's really interesting because that's going to really make people want to integrate the Apple Maps view of things into their apps, like Zillow or any kind of like shopping app or like Uber and those types of things, right? Where you need to see the locations. Airbnb, for example, might be a good one too.
That would be a good one, actually, yeah.
So again, not a lot of detail, but
for a lot of this stuff, they really kind of just like
bullet point.
Exactly, yeah, without going into too much detail because they had about an hour and 45 minutes to go through so much stuff.
Yeah, and at the end of each section, if you didn't watch the live stream, they do like this sort of like collage of all the stuff, and like half the stuff in the collage wasn't even mentioned. Yeah. So there's all these Easter eggs we haven't even had a chance to sort of pick apart and look into, but we're going to certainly do that very soon. What's next on your list?
Next on my list is family sharing.
Yeah, I thought this was really cool. You have the ability now to create specific accounts for your entire family, and you can set the parental controls for those things. You can set things like screen time allotments, so they can actually request additional screen time from you, and also you can approve their purchases. Now, that's not terribly new, but what's new is, say you bring a new device into the family, you get a new iPad, a new iPhone, something like that, you have the ability to set up that device from the get-go for that user using those account settings. So you don't have to go in and set them up afterwards.
Yeah.
I thought that was really handy.
That is really handy. I'd say that'll save a lot of time.
Because you can, set up a new phone for, say, your elderly parent or something like that. They don't have to go through all that stuff. They just set up the mom settings,
counter,
and then you go through, and all those settings are there, and they're brought forward, on a new device.
Yeah.
That just seems like it's going to make things so much faster and quicker to set up a new device.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
One of the other things they showed off with family sharing was shared photo libraries.
Yes.
Which is cool. So we have seen something like this with Google Photos before, where you could have everyone in the same thing, and you can all share your same.
Well, and Apple's had something similar, but not to this degree.
No, the one thing that stuck out to me is you can actually set it so that all the photos you take go directly into that library as well.
Yes.
Very cool. I can see how that could also end somewhat badly.
So a couple of the interesting features about this that we'll touch on what you just were alluding to is you can have up to 5 people can share select or all your photos, either in the past or from now on. You also have the ability to set it so that, say you're on a camping trip, all the photos taken with other people in your family nearby will automatically detect that they're part of the same sort of family event, and they will go into that shared pool. But what was interesting is that everybody has equal access for permissions.
Yes.
So if little Judy doesn't like a photo that her brother took of her, she can go in and delete it or edit it and those types of things. Now, I think these are just copies from their main library that's on their device.
Yeah, I just think so.
But I can see that causing some conflict.
Yeah, I just know what my relationship was like with my siblings when I was younger.
Yeah, it'll be abused.
100%. Yeah, and so I think that was it for the family sharing and the photos.
Yeah, well, there's also an kind of like, you know how you can switch live photos on and off? There's going to be a switch to send it to the shared library as well.
Yes, that's true.
Right in the camera app. That's very handy. So
That
you
is
can,
cool.
So you can turn it off if you're not with your family or you don't want to share those photos that you're taking.
Yeah.
You have the ability as you're taking your photos to do that. So
Yeah. The next thing they talked about I thought was fantastic, and this is the safety check.
yes, this is under the privacy banner. They did a whole section about stuff that comes with this.
Yeah.
They consulted with a bunch of groups around the country, and they basically allow you to review and reset any access to the data, location sharing, and even apps permissions that you have on your device. The specific example they were given were more about like domestic abuse, where you're out of that situation, you don't want that other person to be able to see where you are and that type of thing, depending on how your family accounts are set up, Find My Phone, that type of stuff.
Sure, like you even might have like shared passwords for accounts, things like that. And I thought this was like, I was surprised that they took such little time to go into it, because this seems like a huge thing.
Well, you can also set reminders that will tell you like, hey, it's time to review the permissions that all your apps have. Because a lot of apps get permissions for things that you probably don't even realize, and you probably don't want them to have. Like there's some apps like they need access to your Bluetooth. Well, no, they don't. Or your location. And we've seen some examples of some apps that actually don't even listen to some of those settings sometimes. So this actually lets you review what permissions you've actually done, and you can revoke them at any time.
Yeah, so I mean, for anyone who's been in an abusive relationship or anything, this is like a key feature. And a lot of the groups that they did consult with are groups that specialize in abusive relationship sort of consultation.
Yeah, the only thing I could see that being a problem is that if you get a notification that you no longer have access to that, and you're the abuser, like that can also create confrontation, I would imagine too, right?
I do wonder how they're going to handle it, because they didn't actually go into detail on what the other side would receive, I assume.
If anything, or if they would notice, or anyways.
I know.
We're not going to get into that stuff because we don't know what's going on.
Exactly. What's next on
you can restrict access to your messages as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because again, if you have a shared family account or something like that, anyone in the family technically would have access to look at your messages, and you can revoke who does. You can sort of see an overview of who has what access and remove them.
Yeah, huge. Okay.
Should we get to HomeKit?
Yeah, they touched a little bit on that.
Yeah, so this is something that's been sort of talked about for a while now. Amazon, Google, a ton of manufacturers and Apple have all got together and they sat down and they're like, this isn't working in the smart home space. We all have different standards. We all have different ways of onboarding your new smart home device into your system. It's not consistent.
Yeah.
It's a really crappy user experience for most people, even nerds. We have problems all the time setting up smart home stuff, and we're supposed to know this stuff.
I know, it's a nightmare.
Because there is just no standard. And so they've come up with something collectively called Matter. And this is something that's starting to roll out. And it'll be kind of the thing you're going to see, has Matter support type of thing. And it just makes it dead simple for you to be able to take a new smart plug or a thermostat or a doorbell or a camera or whatever you want to integrate into your home and have it work across all platforms, which is fantastic, not just Apple. And they can interoperate amongst themselves because they're all using the same standard.
Yes, yeah. I mean, you're far more of the smart home guy than I am. So, I mean, what does this mean to you?
Well, I think the fact that like right now you kind of have to pick a ecosystem. You know, are you going to go into the Amazon camp, the Google camp, or the Apple camp, or are you going to go to something that doesn't have a camp? With Matter, it basically doesn't matter anymore. And because of the fact that they're all going to work together, they're all going to be the same standard. There's a lot of different sort of things you might need, like a hub for certain standards, things like that. I think the intent behind this is that they'll all be the same. So as long as you have one of these things, they will all work, kind of thing.
That would be amazing.
But it sounds like more of like a utopian goal than a reality, because the reality is a lot of people are still going to buy maybe off-brand products from Amazon that don't play well with Matter. But they still work and they have their own apps and that kind of stuff. But the goal is to set this thing so that all these manufacturers will want to be a part of it. And you're going to want to look for that so that at least you know that it's going to be easy to set up, easy to manage, and easy and also a secure private thing as well. Because a lot of times the biggest point of failure in your home security systems are really bad smart home devices that have weak security, easily guessable, or no passwords attached to them by default. And so this is also a holistic view at all those pieces of the puzzle, so that it makes sure that you set up a proper password on them, that you have proper IDs, maybe two-factor authentication on them, that type of stuff, and just make everything a lot more secure, a lot more interoperable, and hopefully better.
Hopefully, and then something we saw as well is a refresh to the actual home app. Which is great. So they've added things like categories. So if you have a host of different, even just like all your hue lights and things like that, it'll now combine everything into the lighting section. Or if you
Which is kind of like what Google and Amazon do with their apps.
Oh, really?
You can create zones, you can create rooms, you can name it whatever you want. Like I have like all my garage stuff under one garage thing. So I can just say, you know, hey, assistant, garage off, and it turns off all the lights or anything that I'd want to go off there. And so it just makes more sense. They've also sort of upgraded sort of the visual cues in the app, so it's a little bit more obvious that what things are. Getting nice little widgetization as well.
That's right.
For your home screen, so you get the little temperature gauge that will then pop up on your home screen as a widget, that kind of thing, which is really quite cool.
That was kind of it, I think.
HomeKit. The HomeKit status was really kind of a nice touch, because they're just beautiful little widgets that quickly at a glance you can see what the temperature is in the bedroom or the living room or the dining room, that kind of thing. The next big thing is huge for me, because I'm a big CarPlay nerd, is CarPlay. And they showed off what the next generation of CarPlay is going to be like. And they're really working hard with the car manufacturers to integrate CarPlay not just into the screens, which they're doing a really good job with that now, but everything from like the gauge cluster to even things like your the in-car entertainment,
all the instruments, the car features,
the air conditioning, all that stuff will all be brought into CarPlay. So think of CarPlay as kind of like HomeKit for your car, where you get all the widgetization of all your different things, like the air conditioning, the defrost, all that stuff. But they showed some really clever design stuff for how your instrument panel might look like. So they had your typical big gauges where it's your speedometer and your RPMs and that kind of stuff. And then in the middle is generally where you see some kind of navigation, that type of stuff. But they've actually integrated like the navigation behind the gauges, and they had all these different themes. Again, going back to the customization thing we talked about at the beginning, you have the ability to really customize the look, the color, the style of all of these gauges. They haven't announced specifically who and when, but it sounds like in the next year or so, maybe the end of 2023, we'll start seeing some vehicles with this integrated. And it's also unclear, but I am assuming that you still need an iPhone plugged into this.
I'd say so, yeah.
But I think some of these cars, even if you don't have an iPhone, you'll still get some of this experience in the car itself.
Oh, you reckon, yeah?
I think so, yeah. But the big thing that I really liked is that you really have the ability to do some really interesting things that we haven't quite seen in the car tech space. Being able to change from a traditional, analog gauge for your speedometer to a digital gauge, retro styling looks like steampunk kind of stuff. I think really this is, like, we've heard a lot of rumblings about the Apple Car or the Apple self-driving car. This feels like this is probably what they've been working on. They've been just using some other car as like a sort of a test case.
Right, yeah.
And people put two and two, oh, they're working on a car. Ooh, it's got to be a car that Apple's going to sell.
Yeah.
I still don't think Apple's going to be selling a car anytime soon, but they're certainly figuring out what the inside of that car should look like and how it should behave based on your phone sort of being the sort of the main control unit for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can almost draw a comparison to what they're doing with TVs.
Yeah.
Like, they aren't manufacturing their own TVs, but they have made they've made TV OS, so the way that you interact with your TV is all Apple.
Yeah.
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 So I thought that was really cool, all the CarPlay stuff. And yeah, especially like you mentioned, like the customization that allows you to get into like the instruments, and you can choose what widgets are there. And if you don't want this, was it Revometer? So clearly I'm not the car guy.
No.
But you're able to choose what actually appears on that status
They
screen.
just had like a really nice big wide screen that was literally your instrument cluster.
Yeah.
That was also your navigation. So you see the nav, and then you have these little pop-up widgets that's like your speedometer and your RPMs or whatever you want. You can customize it, and you can make it look however you want. And I haven't seen that. A lot of cars you have the ability to customize maybe the color scheme of some of these things to match your favorite thing.
Yeah.
My car has a few options with that, but I just thought it was amazing what they were showing in that. But we're gonna have to wait a little while for that. They didn't really touch on anything else new in CarPlay as far as functionality for the existing CarPlay people with iOS 16.
Yeah,
But
true.
I suspect there's a lot there that we won't know until we actually install the beta, which I'm looking forward to doing maybe later today.
Yeah. And then I think one of the things that they very quickly touched on is a new spatial audio personalization feature, which I'm gonna have to see. It sounds very interesting. Basically what they said is you can use the depth sensor on your camera or on your phone to, I'm guessing you just make a 3D model of your head in the software, and spatial audio will create a profile that matches your head.
Right.
That's pretty.
In case your ear's over here or something.
Yeah, right. Give you a narrow head, wide head.
Again, it was just a very brief
Very
mention,
quickly there, touched on
but it sounded really cool, and the fact that you can use the LiDAR that's in your depth camera.
You know what's interesting? I saw something real similar to that at CES, where they were using. It was in the sort of the innovation section. Was the kind of startups?
Right, Eureka Park.
Eureka Park, thank you. And it was this South Korean company, and what they had done is basically using the Face ID camera, you could make a 3D model of your head that would then order a bespoke fitting pair of glasses that would fit your exact dimensions.
And you didn't order one?
They gave me a discount, but I was really trying to get a free pair. All right, let's move on to Apple Watch OS 9.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're both watchies.
Yeah.
Although I've got a 5, you've got a 7.
Yeah.
I was hoping to hear a little bit more about maybe the Watch 8. Because it's around the time.
It's getting there, yeah.
And I might be convinced to upgrade. But so one of the things that they showed that we already kind of touched on is some new faces. The astronomy face was really cool because it gives you real-time cloud cover detail about the planet, and it just looks really slick.
It does, yeah.
And they had a couple other watch faces.
They had a lunar one, which I think works with lunar calendars.
Yeah.
And they had a playtime one. I didn't get the name of the artist. I wish I did.
Yeah.
But it's a very cutesy, nice little colorful playtime, like little dolls or people are the numbers, and then when your watch is asleep, they also go to sleep.
Right, everything sort of dims and they sort of like have a nap.
Yeah, and then the last one was a Metropolitan watch face, which you're a very sort of like classic timepiece looking one, but...
It's very similar to the one I typically use when I'm not using Clockology on my watch. That just gives you a lot of data from wherever you're interested in, whatever complications you want. But again, like everything else we've been talking about, there's a lot of customization options, and there seem to be a lot more theming options. So they have these really interesting color combinations. Because quite often, sometimes you either get no themes, and like oh, you can change that color, but everything's looking like crap because the colors don't match the other parts or something. They've actually gone to through the trouble of creating a bunch of themes that you can switch between that are color matched and they look beautiful.
They look really great. Yeah.
The other thing that they talked about, which I thought was really interesting, and this is something that I've always wondered about, how the Apple Watch measures fitness activity, you know, when you're doing certain things. So the example they gave was that when you're running, for example, there's a lot of vertical distance that your body moves, and too much distance means you're wasting energy going vertically instead of going forward.
Yeah.
And so they actually talked about how they use machine learning to understand the rotation of your arm and your elbow to measure how much distance you're actually moving your body, and to come up with a more accurate way of estimating how much distance you've traveled. Because this is something we've tested a few times when I've gone on hikes with my girlfriend and stuff like that. It's like, it doesn't, like, we know how far the hike is, but the watch will say, my watch will say something different than her watch.
Yeah.
And it's because of the way that each of us moves and do things, right? So there's always a difference in how that is measured by the person, but it sounds like they're really using a lot more machine learning on your device to sort of get a much better understanding of what that movement is, and to give you better measurements.
Yeah, and they've actually added some new measurements with that. They've included stride length, ground contact time.
I'm glad you wrote this down.
Yeah. As we were going through, I was like, neither of us are runners.
No.
I was like, I'm glad we can get through this, but I was like, I don't even know, like, I understand what ground contact time is.
Yeah.
I don't know how that plays into what running you do, but.
Well, but because I've always been curious, like, how does your watch know that?
Yeah.
Right? And it's because it's just trying to measure all these different things, and it's extrapolating, thanks to machine learning, some of those things.
Yeah,
So.
which is super. So they've also added elevation and also heart rate zones.
Yeah, the heart rate zones I thought was really cool, because you can actually you can sort of set an optimal heart rate that you want to train for example.
Yeah.
And you can actually get alerts and haptic feedback on your watch that you've achieved that or that you're not achieving it.
Yeah.
Which I thought, seems handy if you're a runner.
That was super cool.
The other interesting thing that I didn't even realize, because I've had an Apple Watch since they came out, was that you don't get the fitness watch or the fitness app on your iPhone if you don't have an Apple Watch.
Really?
But now you do. So they've extended the ability, because your watch or your iPhone can measure some of these things just by being in your pocket while you're walking or doing something. And so even being aware of some of these things, and tracking them, gives you the ability to do that. So they've said that basically they've extended the ability for the fitness app to be available to all iPhone users now. Then they talked a little bit about sleep analysis.
Yeah, and they've added one feature which when I first got my Apple Watch, I was surprised it didn't have this. After reviewing the Samsung Watch 4, this was one of the features that I liked the most, and that's sleep stages. Yeah. Where basically it gives you a detailed report of what your sleep actually looked like, at what points during the night you were in REM sleep, at what points you were in deep sleep, kind of things like that. Yeah, and the 4 stages. Yeah, exactly. So I was surprised that wasn't there on the Apple Watch.
Well, when they first launched, I remember they talked about that, and they basically, the sensor data is there, but they didn't build it into the software, because they were looking at third-party app developers to use that to give you a better, I guess it wasn't their focus at the time.
I guess, yeah.
So, but yeah, now that's there, which is really cool. And the other thing that they've added too is on the health side of things, which is one of the reasons why I always recommend people, especially over a certain age, get an Apple Watch, is atrial fibrillation, which is a heart problem. You can actually track your heart events now, and it will actually give you suggestions, and you can even share a PDF right from your phone to your doctor of all of your events, your AFib events. Apparently this does require FDA clearance, so because this is something that could be construed as a medical device, so they have to get the proper things. I don't think that's going to be a problem, because this is not a new thing that it's capable of identifying. No. You also have the ability to log your medications and receive reminders and track in the health app even without a watch.
I thought this was fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I know a lot of people, like my parents and stuff, that have to keep track of medications, and there are medication apps out there, but to have something that's just built into the system, syncs across your watch, you'll get notifications when it's time to take medications and whatnot. And not only that, but they've also added medication interactions.
You're right.
Yeah, so if you, say, are taking a medication and you have to add a new one to your system, if those medications interact in any way, like negatively, the app tells you.
Right.
Yeah, which is huge.
Well, and you also have a really simple way of getting your medications into the system. You can literally just use your phone and scan the label.
Yeah.
And it'll populate all the things that it needs to know.
Yeah, yeah.
So, like we said before, at the end of each of these sort of sections, Apple would throw up a collage. And one of the things that I saw for Apple Watch OS 9 was dogs and cats in portrait face. So I made a note about that. Finally, you can have your pets on your watch and it knows that it's your pets.
I'm so glad. Yeah. That really should have been the key starring feature.
Yeah, because for the longest time, my watch face was just pictures of my cat.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cute.
All right, now onto some big new hardware.
Yes. This is the one, this was in my predictions.
It was, and I said it was not in mine.
Yeah, and I'm pleased. And let's just get into it. It's the M2.
M2.
Yeah. I mean, what else is there to say? A lot, actually, it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to keep up with all the stats that they were mentioning.
You know, yeah, I was like noting stuff down, and at some stage I was just like, I'll just let it sink in here, because there's
or we'll get it from the press release.
Yeah.
which we have now. But yeah, the big thing is that faster, smaller, cheaper, better. Like it's literally a Daft Punk song now. So the big thing is the 5 nanometer process with 20 billion transistors. Mm-hmm. I soldered 6 transistors last night onto a module.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do 20 billion.
No.
And that's on each of these chips. It's got an 8-core CPU, 1.9 times faster than a 10-core PC laptop chip at 1/4 of the power.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
It's also 18% greater performance than the M1.
Right. So 87% of the performance of a 12-core PC, again at 1/4 of the power.
Yes.
So you just turn up the power a little bit, you can blow that out of the water.
Yeah, and one of the big things is they've upgraded the RAM capacity to be 24 gigabytes now.
That's right.
Which it previously was just 16.
Just.
Sorry. Yeah.
We both have M1 Pro laptops.
Yeah. So
that we bought within the last few months.
They added some stuff, but not enough to make me jealous, thankfully.
Fortunately, yeah.
Yeah.
No, you can't go wrong with anything with M in the name.
Yeah.
So, what else did I have here?
Yeah.
So 40% more transactions per second, or that doesn't sound like a right stat.
I don't have that noted, so I don't.
It sounds like it's just 40% faster per second than the M1 chip.
Yeah.
So, and they just throw around so many numbers.
It was really just a real quick succession of different stats and numbers.
So, it's better, it's more power efficient, and it's better.
Yeah, better. There you go.
And surprise, everyone was sort of expecting a new MacBook Air.
Yeah.
And we got it. We got one at the M2 MacBook Air. It's going to be $1199 US or $1499 Canadian starting point, depending on your configurations. It's got MagSafe and 2 USB-C Thunderbolt ports and a headphone jack.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic because I always hated the MacBook Air because it had one port.
I can't believe that.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Yeah. I mean, the whole point of the MacBook Air is that it's something you can take with you. It's kind of like an iPad, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like an iPad with a keyboard, and it has the ability to, run all day. Like it's got this new one is claiming 18 hours of video playback battery.
Nuts.
Which seems to be like their benchmark for battery life now is the battery playback, and 13.6-inch display with a camera notch. So. A little familiar there.
Yeah.
500 nits, so it's quite bright.
That is bright, yeah.
Brighter than the previous model. And you know what? They finally reached a milestone. 1 billion colors.
1 billion colors, yeah. Thank God.
Yeah, I guess 180 billion or 180 million wasn't quite enough before. So the display is what we're talking about here.
Yeah. So it's coming in at just 11.3 millimeters, and they were showing in like this. They had a beautiful commercial as well to go with it, and they're having all this comparison to feathers and everything. So it does look outrageously thin.
Yes.
And comes in new colors.
It does.
I was thinking that it would come in kind of similar color palettes to the iMacs, like much brighter, much more colorful. Instead, it's a lot more similar to what the iPhones kind of come in.
Yeah.
They like even mentioned it's like you have Starlight, Midnight, Space Gray, the typical ones. But there's 4 new colors, but nothing too outrageous.
It's got an interesting microphone and speaker array system. It's 3 microphones and 4 speakers with spatial audio is kind of hidden in that little gap between the screen and the keyboard.
Yeah.
And because it uses that as sort of like a bounce mechanism, and it sounds pretty darn good for what it is.
Oh, sounds so good, yeah.
Yeah. So really interesting though is there's a new compact 35-watt dual USB-C power adapter, which will be about $79 Canadian, so probably about $50 US, or a 67-watt fast charge adapter for $79 Canadian as well.
Yeah.
So the fact that Apple's finally adding ports to the charge plug is huge.
Yeah. So
you can charge your phone at the same time without taking up a port on your MacBook. So that's great. And that's pretty reasonable. It sounds like it's a little like a mini GAN charger, basically.
Yeah.
So
something like that.
a little small. Hopefully they're going to come up with some bigger ones as well, like Apple branded, like 100 watts or more.
Yeah. Something else we saw is there's no touch bar. This is just the Magic Keyboard that you see on all the new MacBook Pros, the one that comes with the iMac, things like that. So it's just
Touch ID.
Touch ID.
Yeah. Silent fanless design, which is what we had before.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing actually I want to touch on just about the M2 real quick is also they've added the same. That is more interesting for me as the camera guy and the editing guy, is that they've added more sort of video processing acceleration.
Right.
So things for like the H.264 codec, for H.265, and for ProRes transcoding.
Right.
So that was something that was just exclusive to the M1 Pro and the M1 Max when it came out.
Right.
But now we've seen it in the M2.
Perfect.
Okay, speaking of MacBook Pros.
Yes, we have a new 13-inch MacBook Pro.
I have to ask why.
Well, this is it's kind of a misnomer.
Misnomer.
This is really like MacBook Semi-Pro, because it's like a step up from the Air, but it's not a Pro. Like it doesn't have SD card slots and that kind of stuff like we have in ours.
But the design hasn't updated whatsoever.
No.
It still has touch bar.
Yep.
It still has basically the same shell shape. Like we see with the Air, it's updated to be like more like a MacBook Pro with a sort of...
It's a more affordable MacBook Pro. It's going to be $12.99 US or $16.99 Canadian starting point. It'll be available in July with 20 hours of video playback.
Yes, that's super.
Yep.
Oh, and I did notice as well for the Pros, the display is also now supports P3 color gamut.
Right.
So if you're a pro working in actual color grading and color processing, that is a big improvement.
Right. So that leads us to the operating system to run on these new laptops.
Yeah.
They finally came up with a name for it after a lengthy preamble and crazy video about somewhere in California.
Yeah.
It's called Ventura.
Nice.
Nice and simple, easy to remember.
Yeah.
Easy to spell. The big thing that they started off with was something called Stage Manager, and this is really their multitasking sort of system for Mac, but as we'll find out in a little bit, it's also coming to the iPad.
Yeah.
And this allows you to basically arrange apps off to the side without minimizing them, so you can easily bounce around and sort of still see them, especially if you have like an extended display and extra monitors and that type of thing. But it kind of gives you, I called it basically focus mode for apps with stacks. Because you can actually have like all your Safari tabs in one pile, or you can have, one Safari tab and say Photoshop and something else in another stack off to the side, and you click on that and it brings it to the forefront, and everything else sort of gets pushed off to the side. So it's kind of like Minority Report. It lets you sort of shove stuff off to the side, but you can still see it, you can still click it, and you're not using like the sort of the show me all the apps view.
The sort of that very overwhelming.
Right, like especially if you have a lot of apps open like I do, or a lot of tabs, it gives you much more flexibility in how you create these things. And so that's called Stage Manager, and I thought that was really great. And you can, because you can group, say, all these related apps that are for a specific task that you're doing, like editing a video. You got to create a thumbnail for the video. You've got all your raw assets. You've got your scripts, all that kind of stuff. You can put that all into one stack. And
that is something that I've personally had issues with currently when it comes to like, because I'll have different windows, like you said, for open for like, if I'm just like surfing the news in the morning and I'm doing like social stuff. Now instead of having to like minimize 3 different things and then maximize something else.
Or create a separate desktop for each task, which is what I used to do. Because sometimes you'll get a text message in and it'll take you back to the other desktop, and I'm like, well, that's not convenient. The other sort of big thing that they kind of enhanced was Spotlight. So one of the big things that I use Spotlight all the time. That's when you hit the command and space bar, you can just start typing. And so you can actually now quick look the results by hitting the space bar on a result in that Spotlight pop-up. So you can preview that image right away. You get deeper results now as well. So there was some murmurs about this search engine from Apple, and maybe that's what this is going to become, is Spotlight, right? It would make sense because, like on our phones, I don't scroll pages for apps. I just search for them. Because it's faster, because we have so many apps installed.
100%.
And this gives you that flexibility. They've also added the little dots, the Spotlight dots at the bottom of iOS 16 as well. So you can actually spotlight your entire ecosystem of Apple stuff.
So like instead of having to swipe down from the menu to get into Spotlight, it's now just at reach. Similar, I think, to what we see with like Android, where they have the Google bar down below, except now this searches through everything.
So they updated the Mail app as well. They've got undo send, schedule send, and even follow-up notifications now on your email. I don't use the Mail app on the Mac. Do you?
No.
Because we're in the Google land, so we're in a web browser for that stuff, but still cool to have. And those things are also extended to iOS 16 Mail app, which I do use. I use my personal emails in the Apple Mail, and then I use Google Mail for work emails.
So does that extend to your desktop as well, or you just don't touch it on your desktop?
I don't touch it on my desktop.
Okay.
So what else we got here? So Safari. This is really kind of fun. Shared tab groups. So you can actually share a bunch of tabs with somebody or a group of friends. You can create a group in iMessage and share a whole tab of, say, the Airbnb, the camping events you're going to do, like all these things where you need to all like sort of collaborate on a weekend getaway, for example. You can just easily share that tab through iMessage. They'll all get it, and you can even see them interacting with those tabs.
That's right. You can do whole groups of tabs, like.
The other big thing that they came up with macOS Ventura is they want to replace passwords completely with biometrics, and they're using something called passkeys. TM. The idea behind it is that these things can't be phished because they're all stored locally on your device. And they're based on however you get into your device. So whether it's a fingerprint or FaceTime or Face ID or whatever. And you can even use a QR code on a non-Apple device to log into that device or that thing, that system, whatever, with your phone.
So that was, when they announced this, that was the first question that popped into my head. Was, how's this going to work if I want to sign into something on Chrome? And literally the example they showed with a QR code was in Chrome. And they said, they're talking to Google, they're talking to Microsoft, work with other third parties.
So the big thing about this is that it can't be phished or leaked. So you can't get an email from someone saying, hey, your bank password was reset. Click here to log in again, and then use your old password to change it and give the phisher the fisherman, your credentials, and it can't be leaked because this information, these biometric keys, aren't stored on that service or website. They're stored on your device.
Yeah.
So, and Apple doesn't even know them.
That's wild.
Which, you know, can be a little scary because, again, you want to kind of see how this workflow, like what if I damage my fingerprint or something like that? Like you have to go in and be able to undo some of this stuff sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
So, again, still exciting and interesting. I'd love to get rid of passwords.
Yes.
They've extended continuity.
Oh, yes.
So this is something really cool. So if you're, say, walking into your office or to your house and you get a FaceTime call, then you're at your desk all of a sudden, your desk will actually recognize that you're on a FaceTime call and you have a little button you can press to switch it.
Yeah.
Seems simple enough.
Yeah. It's cool. I like that.
Yeah. But with the continuity camera, I'll let you talk about this one.
Okay. I thought this was super cool. Basically, just straight up, you can use your iPhone as a webcam now.
Without any other apps.
Anything else. So this was something that you could do through like third parties. And
We looked at all this stuff during the pandemic when everyone was trying to get a webcam, like a better webcam experience. Because there's a lot of third-party apps that can give you this functionality, but you have to install an app on your computer, an app on your phone, and probably pay somebody some money to use that functionality.
100%. But now it's just built in.
Yeah.
And they've brought out a little hardware clip, just MagSafes to the back of your phone, and you can use the rear cameras to then use as your webcam.
Probably more like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they're actually working with Belkin to create some of these hardware clips, and they showed a bunch of different styles. And the cool one I saw was like a MagSafe one, so you just literally just clip your phone on there, and you're good to go.
Yeah, and the one thing that they showed off with this that I thought, well, actually, I'll save that for last. There's a few other kind of interesting features that they've included in with this new sort of the continuity camera. So they have a portrait mode. They now have a center stage, so you can use your wide angle, and similar to how they have it on the iPads. You can move around, and they have a nice little studio light mode, which will darken your background and then make you brighter.
Yeah.
But at the start of the show, that I think when they said, both of us were just like,
how are they doing that?
No, I was like, they are lying. There's no way that this is a real thing. But essentially, using the center stage and the ultra-wide lens on your camera, you can have a split-screen mode that will show a front-facing view of you as well as your desktop, as if it's a top-down view. Yeah,
it basically takes that really distorted view and using some camera learning tech.
Which we have seen in center stage on the iPads.
Oh yeah, and it basically takes it and makes it into look like a normal thing. And as they were demoing, moving like your hand around, like picking up a drink.
Like a card trick was the thing that they were doing. And I was speechless after that.
I can't wait to try that, actually.
Yeah, that's so neat.
Because taking advantage of the extra cameras that you already have makes so much more sense.
Oh, so much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this extends to any of the sort of the conference calls apps, like they showed off Teams, Zoom.
Because you know how I do it. I actually have 2 webcams at home. I have an older webcam that I would switch to, like in Teams or Zoom or Skype, whatever, and I can like point it down at something if I want to show something up close.
Right.
But I have to switch the camera to do that. Now it's just built in.
Yeah, you can just have like through split screen, side by side.
Yeah.
Both camera views.
Yeah.
Oh, nuts.
Really cool. I think that's most of it for macOS Ventura. Let's talk about the last topic, which was iPadOS 16, something we're both very interested in.
Yeah, I'm a big iPad person here. I have all my notes. I was taking them down on my iPad throughout the entire show. And they brought over a lot of the same things we've seen earlier on.
Yes.
So everything from the focus modes on iOS 16, that's all coming over.
Yeah.
And the collaboration aspect of Safari, that's going across all the devices, including iPads. But Freeform, yeah.
So essentially they've added a whiteboard to your FaceTime collaboration videos.
Yeah, so where you can collaborate in like a sheet or a doc typically, now they've basically given you a huge playground that everyone can just work in simultaneously.
Yeah, which looked really, Clearly, they have a lot of good artists.
Oh, they do. Yeah, they put a lot of effort into their notes. Like.
Their notes are beautiful.
Yeah, but this is something similar to Jamboard.
Yes.
Which, it's things like that. But having it in the Apple ecosystem just makes it that much more, I guess, usable.
So they've also, they talked a little bit about gaming throughout the keynote. And
they have their new Metal 3 infrastructure.
Yeah, they just made everything better.
That's, it's
easy.
Resident Evil 7's coming to...
Right. Yeah. So they had, you have the ability to share play your gaming sessions now. So
yes.
Which is kind of cool.
That's neat, yeah. I've never gamed on my
iPad. No, maybe we will with Resident Evil, though. We'll try it out.
True.
They also talked about desktop class apps, and that's always been something that sort of, in my head, held me back from using my iPad more, is because traditionally there's some apps that it's not the same experience.
100%, yeah.
And, I mean, I'm not saying we're going to replace everything on a MacBook with an iPad, but there's certainly some things that they're striving towards making better, or making it more seamless to move between the devices.
Yeah, and they didn't go into a ton of detail on this, which I would have liked to see, because my big thing for the longest time is that the Files app on iPad isn't really up to scratch for using as like a laptop alternative.
Right.
Whereas now they've mentioned that there are going to be updates to it.
Yes.
They didn't show anything, which is annoying. We'll see it soon.
The big thing with these WWDC announcements, if you haven't watched them before, is they, at a blistering rate like we saw today, they give you just a million bullet points of things that are coming. And then over the course of this week, people start like uncovering more and more stuff. And even Apple will still trickle out more detailed press releases for certain features that they just didn't have time to cover.
Yeah.
Because they had like, it was almost literally a full 2 hours. And they didn't stop talking.
Throughout the entire thing. Yeah. It was going at a blazing pace.
Yeah.
So some things they've added is Find and Replace.
Yes.
And you can have custom toolbars for snaps.
Yeah. We mentioned it earlier, but Stage Manager, the multitasking tool, is also coming to iPadOS. And it's got some really nice features that I'm looking forward to the ability to do, is resizing some of these windows. When you're like, full screen them, you can resize them, and they will create layouts that you can choose from. So you could actually kind of have like different workspace layouts. Yeah. But even you can finally have overlapping windows, which is something you couldn't do before. Because basically each app has its own thing, or you have the split screen, but you can't have them overlapping, so you can flip back and forth between them. Say you're copying some notes from one thing or doing transcription, whatever.
Yeah, it's far more similar to a typical desktop that we've seen on iPadOS before.
Yeah, you kind of wanted that, but they've always had sort of this one app, one thing at a time kind of process.
Yeah.
With some multitasking stuff that not quite as...
No, they updated it last year and it did work a lot better and gave you those sort of templates for how you want to size windows. And they've added to that in that you can increase or decrease the pixel density on certain windows, so you can actually just you can show more in one app and basically squeeze it out. For any of the M1 iPads, they've added a virtual memory swap. So basically, you can assign more virtual memory to certain apps and take them from others. So if you're big in Procreate, you're using the 3D modeling stuff, you can assign more memory to Procreate so that your processing is a little bit smoother.
Right. Yeah, just sounds good.
Yeah, why not?
So that's pretty much all I had.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, you got more?
Going back to desktop mode, they also have, Stage Manager. They do have actually like a full sort of desktop mode if you were to plug in your iPad to a secondary display.
Oh, okay.
So if you plug it into a monitor, I don't know if you've ever done it before, but for one, the iPad only ever mirrors the display.
Right.
And number two, it doesn't take up the full size.
Yes, I've noticed that.
So if you have a 16:9 monitor, the iPad's 3:2 display will always leave you with black bars on either side.
Yes.
Whereas now, it fills the display, and also it just acts as if you have another display. You can drag things up there, drop things from one app into the other. You can have your whole Stage Manager just up there.
Right.
I thought that was really cool. I really want to try that out.
We have lots to try.
Yeah, and that allows you can use 8 apps simultaneously.
Very cool.
And I think that's it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're going to catch our breath. We're going to go see what else has been announced since we've been on this live. And see about getting some beta versions of some of the software installed.
Yeah.
So we can let you know more about it later on.
Yeah, so to finish it off, thank you for tuning in. Up on this week, we have a video coming out on the Steam Deck tomorrow, if you're watching this live, where John has basically had the Steam Deck for, what do you say, about a week?
A week and a bit.
Yeah, and shows us how you can run some pretty cool emulators
Yes.
on the Steam Deck. So that's coming out tomorrow, Tuesday. You've got the radio show?
Yes. I don't even know what we're doing yet because we haven't met yet to talk about it.
But it'll be this weekend.
This weekend.
Yeah.
This weekend will probably be a further discussion about all things WWDC, at least on probably the app show and maybe a little bit on GetConnected. Yeah, and I think we've got some guests and other good stuff, which we'll let you know about real soon.
Yeah, so thank you to everyone who tuned in. If you enjoyed it, why don't you give it a like and a subscribe. My name is Robin.
And I'm John.
And we'll see you in the next one.